Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our Open Police Commission meeting and welcome anybody that's joining us today. We have the executive team from the police service here and all of the commission members. So, Andrea, if you can bring up the agenda, please. Taking a look at the agenda, if there is nothing to change or add, I'm asking for a motion to accept the agenda for May 21st.
Carrie moves.
And a seconder, please.
Miles.
All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to the minutes. We have the minutes from January 16th, 2020. Taking a look at them. Is there any discussion, questions, or changes that need to be made? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to accept the minutes of January 16th.
Dad.
Mandy will move.
And seconder?
Dad.
Thank you, Mr. Rudich. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Moving on to number 3 is the police budget update from Chief McGrogan.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick update. So we've done our April variance report, and it looks like we're reporting a rather healthy positive variance. Some of that is related to our realignment of service related to COVID, a reduction in overtime, reduction in court time, and a reduction in travel and training. And that's my update on the budget. All looked very healthy.
Thank you. Moving on to Office of the Chief report. I'll let the chief, or if you guys want to have that order that's presented there or a different order, go ahead.
No, this will work fine, thank you. I'll just quickly go over the chief's report, and then I'll be turning it over to Inspector West for the administrative report. So basically, as you know, we've been embroiled in COVID since March the 20th. We have had a lot of really good work, which you're going to hear from all of our folks here, our inspectors in charge of the various divisions. But I can tell you there's been some really good work done and a couple compliments. Constable Jenna Pierce, who is a relatively new and inexperienced member, got some really great information and dealt with it appropriately. And as a result, we nailed some firearms charges. That was a really good one. Constable Wist did some great work. He's a veteran constable with our service in relation to a medical issue that he recognized and got somebody help in a nice, timely fashion. So that was really good. And other than that, we have our recruit. I just want to mention we have our police cadet graduation next Friday. We've offered 7 of the cadets, which are all of them, employment with the service, just to fill existing vacancies. So we have 7 folks starting next Friday, and the swearing in will take place depending on the numbers, either indoors or outdoors, and obviously following all the COVID restrictions. One last thing is Constable Taylor Olenek was nominated for Rookie of the Year by magazine by his supervisor, actually, and he was a successful recipient of that award. I have to tell you that he started his class with Jenna Pierce, and I think either one of those two would have been worthy recipients, but it was really awesome news to hear of Taylor receiving that nomination. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to turn this over to Inspector West for the administrative services highlights.
Thanks, Chief. Just to sort of expand on the cadet training. So obviously the training section, had to sort of scramble to work around and try and finish the recruit class under the COVID restrictions. So the first thing they did was sort of reorg and deliver what they could online. And they also created a virtual classroom and some of you will remember the old Hollywood Square. So you actually had all the recruits on one screen, and so the instruction was delivered as usual by our instructors. So they got all that sort of instructional lecture-based training. Then the next sort of hurdle came to, we had all the hard skills, so our officer safety training, the firearms training, and driver training. And we really had some decision making to do on how we were going to move forward with that. It was decided that through some creative and selective scheduling, vigorous use of personal protective equipment, and so on and so forth, they were able to finish that off. So that was really a huge win. And in fact, we submitted a briefing note to the province on how we were going to go about doing that. And they managed to pull it off, so we're really proud. And of course, there was the assessment process, which is scenario-based, authentic assessments, still went ahead. And so a lot of scrambling, a lot of scheduling, but Darcy and Todd and the gang there just did a great job of that. Information and standards. So if you recall, our two contract workers, Tim Petro and Randy Teal, their contracts will end at the end of June. And we've got a couple of accommodated officers who will be taking over those positions. So they've been training for the last few weeks. It's Ty Claypool and Brad Rivard will take over those positions come the end of June. And I don't usually mention our quartermasters, but I have to tell you, we have a new quartermaster's clerk. It's Alicia Sass, who's done just a great job in this environment of coming in and keeping us well supplied with personal protective equipment, including masks, hand sanitizer, all that stuff that's so difficult to get. We were able to get it, track it. We have a relatively low burn rate, and there's essentially been, our frontline people have been very well supplied. And in fact, we just managed to track down masks, reusable masks, the M7500 masks. So that's great news, very hard to find items. So she's just done an outstanding job. And in IT, of course, they scrambled at the onset of this to set up virtual desktops for everybody and accommodate work from home programs. We've got our information management section that's almost exclusively working at home. And they got that off the ground within a few days, which was just excellent. And that's when we're working really well with the provincial court and with the Crown's office. It's been pretty seamless, actually, unless there's something I don't know. And of course, they've also set up these, scrambled to set up virtual conference rooms and so on and so forth. So Aaron and Mike and Rob and Katch did a great job of keeping us afloat. And of course, now they're starting to get back to their usual business, which includes a full report management system upgrade. And then we've got units like our forensic identification unit that have just kind of been business as usual. It's an essential service, and essentially if we've got to collect evidence, they still go out and get it. So probably a little bit more selective on what we're sending them out for, but it's been pretty much business as usual for them. And that is it for my report, unless anybody had any questions.
Thanks, Inspector West.
Sorry, I forgot to turn my mic back on there. If I could turn it over to Inspector Secondiak for operations.
Thanks. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. Those were good times, Constable Secondiak. I just wanted to start off by, on page 13 of my report, to talk about a new initiative we started in January. And it was really about proactive directed patrol. So we've always done that, but in January we thought, let's get all the supervisors together in one room operationally. So that included traffic, the patrol supervisors, our analyst, and bylaw services, and really let the public know what we're doing every week. So we focused on a number of drug houses where we're going to focus traffic on, some of our targeted offenders we're going to work on for the week, and we released that to the public. And we did it, we've done it every week since January. There was some disruption there when COVID first started in March, but we've continued with that, and it's been very positive feedback from the public. I think just optically on letting them know what we're doing. We're going to have another one out hopefully later today, or if not early tomorrow. So I think there's huge value in really sharing with the public what we're doing in our downtime when we're not responding to calls. So I just wanted to advise the Commission on that. Just going into some of the highlights of the operation report, on page 14, the second bullet, on January 2nd of this year, you may have read about this in the media, but at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we received a panic alarm in the mall. And it turned out that there was a stabbing that had occurred there. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the events that occur across Canada and really across the world, where we have kind of weapons offenses in large areas. So our patrol officers are all trained in rapid deployment in response to high-risk situations. And this was a situation that we were at within a minute or two, and the patrol officers were able to deal with this very effectively. It turned out that there was likely some mental health issues in this particular file, but they were able to deal with it quickly, effectively, and really reduce any further incidents that could have occurred at the mall. So I thought that was an outstanding example of some of our training that's done by our training section. Moving on to page 15, I just wanted to highlight on February 22nd, there was a vehicle stop that was done really for a drug investigation by one of our experienced police officers here. He stopped a vehicle and located a number of weapons inside the vehicle, a sawed-off shotgun, a sawed-off .22 rifle with a silencer, rifle, an SKS rifle, the folding stock, magazines, and various other weapons. So these were a group of two traveling criminals that were coming from Regina to Calgary. And it just, again, it shows some of the danger that the patrol officers deal with when they're dealing with some of these offenders, and really our drug unit, Inspector McGough can speak to that more, but very high risk when we're dealing with a lot of these offenders. They have weapons not only to protect themselves, but really to scare and to harm others. So that was a great example of just an unknown vehicle stop by patrol members. Moving on to page 16 in March, really this is when COVID hit and we really had to change our patrol delivery response. So as a result of COVID, we temporarily collapsed the traffic and community safety unit and put them in patrols. And the logic behind that was, okay, we just need more bodies on the street to prevent crime just by our presence. So we've done, I think it's been an excellent job at augmenting our response, so we can't physically be in places all the time. So we did note in the first few weeks there was an increase in crime such as shoplifting and property offenses. So we had officers sit high profile out in some of the stores. Some of them were big box stores, some of them were smaller retail locations. And that really drove down a lot of the shoplifting and a lot of the crime we had. So I think with the amount of officers we had on patrols, and we're able to really deal with some of those crime trends that popped up during the initial COVID crisis and some of the trends we've seen since the initial spread of the virus. And I'm also pleased to report we've issued no COVID tickets up to this point. We've really stressed education over enforcement at this point. We would issue a ticket if we had to, but at this point, we have to tell you the community's been excellent here in kind of complying with the COVID demands from the province and the city. So we're really pleased with how responsive the community's been. Moving on to page 17, there's just one thing I wanted to highlight about an issue that happened in Police Point Park. We received a complaint of a male with a firearm concealed under his jacket. The reason I highlight this, it really focuses on two things. That this was the first time we used our drone, and we were able to look over the encampment. Turns out it was a homeless encampment, and ensure where the subject was and for the safety of all the officers. So it was an extremely successful and positive deployment. And secondly was about the homeless encampment strategy that we have. So we have had issues with some of these encampments in the past, and we have a proactive initiative with community housing where we do patrol the parks. Right now they're out about 6 hours a day in the parks and trails, and we'll look for these encampments. And the goal is not enforcement in our activities. It's really about finding these people a place to stay with shelter and really where they have the necessities of life. So it's been very successful, and our rates of homeless encampments have been very low thus far, but they may go up as the weather improves. But I think our strategy should be successful. And then lastly, I just wanted to go over some of the bylaw issues on page 23 that have come to light as a result of COVID. So near the bottom of the page, you can see that we did have a short spike and increase in dog attacks, and that was on both people and animals in the parks and trail areas of Medicine Hat and green spaces. So there was, some talk in the community about changing the bylaw, perhaps. But I think our response has been, again, increased presence of bylaw and police officers in parks areas. And I'm pleased to report that even as of last week, they're down from years past. We had a very few incident or two last week. So I think our strategy on just having more officers present and educating the public has been successful, even in these areas. Another issue we've had are noise complaints. So we've had a huge increase in noise complaints, likely due to COVID-19 and the fact that more people are at home, and of course there'll be more conflict with different residences. So again, we've really focused on patrols. We've had to lay some tickets in cases where people are non-compliant or there's been multiple complaints, but generally people in the city have been excellent to deal with, and when we sit down and educate them on the noise bylaw. And really, those are the highlights from operations for the past few months, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Inspector Secondiak.
Okay, if there's no questions then, Inspector McGough, would you like to give an overview, please?
Okay, thank you, Chief and Chair Redden. Can you guys hear me?
Sorry. Can I ask one? I'm sorry. Hello?
Go ahead, Ms. Councilor Friesen.
I've got two things going here, so I'm not sure which one to unmute. I apologize. It took me a while there. It's more a couple comments. First of all, I really wanted to applaud the bylaw and the service in general about their approach to the increased dog complaints with more education and awareness, and it may be enforcement, yes, but the fact that you're present there more often and talk to people, and it just makes everyone more accountable and aware. So I really applaud that. And secondly, I just wanted to ask about, oh shoot, I forgot what I was going to ask about. No, I wanted to comment on something, and it's completely out of my mind with all my muting problems. If I think of it later, I'll ask it. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Friesen. I can answer any time if you remember what you were going to ask. Thank you.
So, Chief, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thanks, Chief and Chair Redden. I picked a few highlights to speak of, and they cover a window of about 4 months, so January to the end of April. And the first is an example of the collaborative efforts between MHPS Organized Crime and the Calgary Police Service. In January, the Organized Crime Section concluded an investigation into a male living in Calgary who was believed to be a large-scale supplier of methamphetamine and fentanyl in Medicine Hat. After several undercover operator purchases of methamphetamine and fentanyl, the members seized approximately 0.5 kilogram of methamphetamine and 84 grams of fentanyl. The file was handed over to the Calgary Police Service at that time, the street enforcement team. They executed a search warrant in Calgary, and they recovered almost 2 kilograms of methamphetamine, nearly 1 kilogram of fentanyl, $90,000 of cash, and 5 firearms. Moving on to, I think, which covered off on page 27 or 28 of the report that you guys are reviewing right now. I want to talk about another file. It was a 4-month investigation by the organized crime team. It was an undercover operation where members basically purchased quite a sizable amount of methamphetamine from the supplier in Calgary. On the 28th of April, that ended with a seizure of over 1 kilogram of meth from the accused on their arrest. So 2 people from Calgary were arrested. Basically, we almost seized 2 kilograms of methamphetamine, which is a record seizure for Medicine Hat, with a street value of approximately $140,000 and 20 grams of cocaine. I guess just as a matter of fact, when we look at the first 4 months of this year and compare them to the last 4 months, first 4 months of last year in 2019, we've had a 61% increase so far, the total value of drugs seized by the organized crime team, and a 219% increase in the amount of methamphetamine that we've seized in this community as well. So obviously meth is the drug of choice. Moving on to, I think it's page 31 on your report there. It's basically the Regional Priority Crimes Unit, which is a new team. It's a rebranding essentially of our Priority Street Crimes Unit. We have received some alert funding and we've expanded that team. We now have 7 investigators. 5 of them are from Medicine Hat and 2 are the RCMP, although they haven't been able to fill those positions yet. We have them temporarily filled with our investigators. They basically now look after Medicine Hat, and they also look after the counties of Newell and Cypress County. They have a mandate essentially to target prolific property crime offenders in the region and also to deal with any emerging crime trends. And you can see that in the month of April, they basically laid 26 criminal code charges and seized over $100,000 in property. So we expect that unit to be quite busy with all what's going on in the area. Moving on to, I think it's page 33, is basically, it talks about the call center. So due to COVID-19 concerns in the community, we had to look at maintaining a high level of business continuity. We looked at limiting unnecessary interaction with the public, but yet still be able to provide a Cadillac Police Service response to the citizens in the community of Medicine Hat. And one of the things that we did was come up with the call center, where we could take other units, what we collapsed, put them into patrols so they could react as first responders, but also take some of the calls that were deemed as a priority call and were dealt with through the call center. That would basically, the intent was basically to allow the first responders to deal with the higher priority calls. And you can see that through some of the numbers on page 34 there, the number of calls taken was quite significant in the time period between March 16th and May 10th. You can see there's 1,292 calls for service that were dealt with through that area. We also changed some of the reporting characteristics of the online reporting that we had. And we've seen an increase of about 50% of people now reporting certain crimes and certain incidences online, which again, it's stuff that we don't have to deal with, but it's stuff that we need to capture. That is essentially, Chairperson Redden, the extensive My Support Services report. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Inspector McGough. Are there any questions?
It's Julie. Tim, can I ask if you've had any pushback about the online reporting? It certainly seems to be going well. I know sometimes people feel that their concerns, their crimes as they see them are not aren't important, and they've paid 3 years for policing, and the only time they asked about something, they did, they had to do it online, and no one cared. Now I'm sure that attitude is probably shifting, but I just wondered if you could comment on that.
Thank you for the question. It was one of our concerns moving forward with the call center and the online and looking at that, and because we wanted to ensure that people's concerns were being looked into and being treated seriously. And we haven't had any calls whatsoever complaining about the service that we are providing now to those types of calls. And I know that because I've asked the members in the areas that man those positions in the call center and the supervisors who review those calls. So we're really happy with the acceptance that we've received so far from members of the community regarding online reporting and actually dealing through the call center. So unless we hear something negatively, and I haven't, and nobody else has, then we're treating it as a success at this point in time.
That is really good to hear. Thank you very much.
So, Ms. Redden, that's the end of our Office of the Chief report, unless there's any further questions.
Chief McGrogan, oh, sorry, Mandy or Mrs. Campbell? I just wanted to
No,
say
I'm
that,
good, thank you.
okay, thank you. I have been very impressed with the police service and the planning that has gone into COVID and the execution of the plan. It's been very smooth. There's been a very visible police presence in the community, and even though the interactions with the community change, they still remain positive, and I think I sure am very impressed by how the service has reacted to this situation and handled it. So thank you very much. And it was really nice to see the two first points in your report, Chief, because it's just so nice to see something positive these days, and really accent those the saving of that fast reaction time, and also on both members' responses, so that it was a positive result. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. So impressed with the work of our folks through this. And really, everybody's been very good at adapting and changing and adjusting. I think they've used great judgment through this and great maturity. So I'm just so thankful to have been a part of it, and just see that I think our service grow as a whole through this experience. Thank you.
Well, job well done. Thank you to everyone there. So now, Chief, you talked about the annual report, and I don't see it on the agenda.
It was sent as a separate package.
Sorry. I thought we just included in the Chief's report, if that's all right.
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't know if Andrew's been able to put it up on the screen yet. Okay, so I'll start if that's okay, and just go through it a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
So the purpose of an annual report is obviously to look back and reflect on our service, what we deliver to the community. Does it align with our strategic plan? And there's a few provincial requirements too around reporting, so we kind of bundle it all into one, and it's not uncommon to do this. So, excuse me, it's always great, I find, it's always great to look back and reflect, I think, on the work that's been done. We're so busy all the time moving forward and looking at what's next and how we're changing and how we're adjusting. To actually go back and do this report, I think, really has a lot of value, both internally and also our reporting to our community through the Police Commission. So this is, I guess, the maiden voyage of this. So if the Police Commission approves this report after this presentation, then we will be announcing this to the community and to the police service that it's complete. So it's obviously, we always start with the organizational chart just to give everybody an overview of what kind of is happening, and then we move into a message, obviously, from the chair of the Police Commission. So thank you for your help with that. Bit of a message from the chief, and then we get into our priorities that are all in our strategic plan. So it's really a reporting of our priorities, and again, you can all read it, so unless you want me to, I'm not going to go into each of the priorities, but the four major priorities around community safety, community engagement, human resources, and technology. And then we go into our budget and where we've been, how our budget was, how it came out, and then Police Act and criminal complaint investigations, and then we end with some recognition. So the bottom of the report, and we've kind of used the same format. It's not uncommon for services, but it's always nice to end off with some recognition, and you can see a number on page 31, if I could slip you back to there, some great work that's been done by different folks. We've got inspectors' comments from, you know, a traffic unit and several of the members, and then compliments from, like, one from the, on page 32 from the Attorney General, complimenting Staff Sergeant Thorburn, Sergeant Garrett, Constables Clark and Click for their work on a major file that we're working on. So it's really a celebration as well of the year that we had, and it really helps us keep our compass pointed in the right direction. And so I'd like to introduce this. I'd open up for any questions that the Commission might have as you leaf through it, and any feedback that you might have. And if we're good to go, this is more or less the announcement to the community.
Any questions or comments from the Commission? Chief, I think it looks like a beautiful document that is celebrating everything that you guys do and work towards, and I like the service recognition piece at the end, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. Andrea, I don't know that we have any ability to do community consultation at this point, right?
Correct. There was a message that if anybody had any comments, email them directly to you, Cindy. So I don't think we received any, so I think we can just move on from there.
Okay. So I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Our upcoming meetings that we have planned at the moment, and we keep reevaluating whether they will be live stream or in person. But the plan at the moment is that we will meet on June 18th at noon via live stream, and July 16th at noon again via live stream.
Sandy, can I just ask a question? I'm sorry I wasn't able to be at the beginning. I would have asked it then.
Please do.
To the chief, I've had quite a bit of concern expressed by, it happens to be my neighborhood, but this didn't come from me, just so you know. My neighborhood behind us is that new Canyon Creek development, and they're going to, the developer apparently is going to apply for a time extension, which is your purview. Just so the rest of the commission knows, there are restrictions about times that you can have noise and construction and so on. And there's the ability to apply for an extension to the chief of police. So that's the background. There's been I've really had a lot of pushback from the neighborhood about this, and we don't agree with an extension, and will we get a chance to have a voice? So that's my question. Is there a chance for a neighborhood or whatever to have a voice to you in your determination?
Sorry, what was the question at the end? Is there a what?
I said, is there an opportunity for whoever might be impacted by an extension to have a voice or an opportunity for input to you prior to your decision?
No, but there is an appeal process, which, you know, I mean, I'm quite aware of the extension. I've already sent the extension request back to the company, approving some of it with some parameters around it. So again, every one of these is a minefield. I didn't realize it was as political as it seems to be, though I did know there was going to be some pushback. A city bureaucrat was in touch with me. I asked them if they wanted to weigh in on the matter, and they didn't want to. But there is an appeal process through, as you would be aware, through City Hall. Their request seemed reasonable because, you know, they used the usual levers. Because of COVID, they wanted to start an hour earlier so they can get their people kind of in gear, kind of separate times, which, you know, I guess for efficiency makes sense. The one parameter we put around it was the Sundays and holidays, that it'd be a rare exception, and it would be under continual scrutiny. So there is no ability, though there should be, and to some degree, I wonder at times why this goes to the chief of police, but that is the process, and so it's already signed, and now will be an attempt or an availability for your group or the group that has been talking to you to actually appeal it.
Okay, thanks for that information. Yeah, I think it's unfair for you to have to do that too, but I didn't say that, but I'm saying it to you.
Yeah, well, we just go on the best judgment we have. I usually talk to our bylaw enforcement folks, Heather Trail, our supervisor, to get her feedback before I make any decisions on any of them. She was on annual leave, but was aware of it and upon return, and I think the stipulation for the weekends and holidays in particular is under very close scrutiny, and I just, so it's out of my hands now.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Julie. If there is nothing else, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today and hanging in for our first live stream meeting. We will see that is the plan for July and August, or June and July, but as things open up, maybe that there's opportunity for in-person meetings. I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and I hope that you all stay well and healthy. And we will sign off.
Bye, everyone.